First of all, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate you spending your Friday afternoon with me. My name is Susie Taylor, and I am a copywriter. This is a little different presentation for me. I usually try to do things that are more hands-on. This is how you make sure your website works. This is how you tell who your ideal clients are. And I'm doing something a little different today. And I think that this is something that
Mhm.
appealed to a lot of people because I had about 150 people say that they were interested in this topic. You and I may not have the same story, but I bet we have some things in our stories that are in common. We've all had those times in our lives when life turned left and we had planned on going straight, and the universe kind of wrote out something a little different for us than what we had expected. For me, that started with my son, Evan. The moment that I became his mom, he was born 14 weeks early, weighed 2 pounds, 5 ounces, ended up with cerebral palsy. He was blind, had seizures, but he was one of the best teachers I ever had. For 28 years, I was his caregiver, his advocate, his mom. And if you told me that his story and the lessons I learned through him would someday become the foundation of how I help business owners with their marketing, I'd never have believed it. But what I have learned since he passed in June of 2021 is that even the hardest parts of our lives can become holy ground. And today I want to talk to you about your holy ground, not in a dramatic way or in a bare your soul to strangers way, but in a way that might help you understand how the hardest chapter you ever lived through may actually be the story your clients need the most. And I want to show you today on how to find the golden thread in your own story, that one thread that connects who you are and what you've lived through to how you serve others. But first, I want to take you back to a moment that shaped me long before I really understood its significance. So it was a Wednesday afternoon in late 1994. Evan, who was 2 at the time, was in his wheelchair listening to cartoons. Our second son, Philip, who was still an infant, was in the car seat on the table. My parents were visiting and they wanted to, they couldn't hold him. So I just put him on the car seat on the table. And all of a sudden, my dad looked up and said, "Oh, look, Evan's dancing." And with that one sentence, our lives became much more complex than it had been when we only had a son who was blind, had cerebral palsy, and was fed through his feeding tube. On that Wednesday afternoon, our family entered the seizure zone. Evan's dancing turned out to be a tonic-clonic seizure. It's what they used to call a grand mal seizure. We dialed 911. The medics arrived within 5 minutes, but he was still seizing. So they administered sedatives to stop the seizure activity, put him into the squad. I climbed in after him, clutching that. I mean, he was 2 years old. I had a big 3-ring binder that had all of the information I would ever need, that it held his life story.
Mm.
So we get to the Children's Hospital emergency room. Now, if you've ever experienced an ER visit before, you know that if a patient is brought in via ambulance, the doctors and nurses take that very, very seriously. Very seriously. So I followed the gurney into the exam room, and the head doctor immediately asks, "What's going on?" At that moment, I have maybe 30 seconds before the team stops listening to me and turns all their attention to Evan, which is a good thing, but they need to understand his history before they actually start doing anything. But I don't have time to give them the full story. I don't have the time to explain the nuances. So I just blurt out, Evan is a former 26-week preemie after premature rupture of the membranes at 19 weeks. He had a grade 3/4 brain bleed on the right side of his brain, which resulted in hydrocephalus. He has a ventricular peritoneal shunt. He has cerebral palsy, retinopathy of prematurity with no detectable vision, a 3.0 18 French Mickey button, which is the feeding tube, that's been in place since January of 1993. Here's a list of his doctors. Here's a list of his current medications. And here's a list of all of the surgical procedures he's had. Oh, and by the way, his medical record number is 789743. 30 seconds. It took me 30 seconds. And something happened. Everybody just stopped. And the head doctor says, "Are you a nurse?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just the mom of a son who spent half of his life in and out of your hospital." So, what does that have to do with marketing? So, that moment wasn't just advocacy and being a parent, it was clarity under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It taught me that when the stakes are high, clarity matters much more than completeness. So it doesn't matter whether you're in an ER, on a website, at a networking event, you've only got seconds to get someone to stop scrolling, to stop skimming, and to stop tuning out, and actually help someone understand who you help, what problem you solve, and why that matters. That's not just marketing, that's communication with purpose. And learning to do this isn't just about being clear, it's about being seen. My son was nonverbal. He hardly said a word his entire life. But I learned to read him. I learned that communication isn't just words, it's presence, it's paying attention. It's noticing the furrow in his brow, or the way his hand would relax when he felt safe, or the slight change in his breathing that meant, "I'm scared, Mom." Your customers are doing the same thing. They're trying to tell you what they need, maybe not with words. Maybe it's in the questions they keep asking, or the objections that they raise, or the way they hesitate before they buy, the things they complain about in your industry. If you are paying attention, really paying attention, they'll tell you exactly how to serve them better. But most of us are so busy talking at our customers that we forget to listen to them. So here's another story. This one is more about resourcefulness. All right. So picture this. It's Christmas Day. We're at Grandma and Grandpa Taylor's house for the family get together. Comes time to give Evan his tube feeding. That's when we realize we forgot to pack the connector that would go onto his feeding tube that would allow us to actually feed him. Now, we can't let him go hungry. And I know this is going to sound really, really selfish, but we really didn't want to leave. And it's a 90-minute drive back to our house. What we did have was a smaller syringe, a large feeding syringe that we normally would use for his feedings, and some duct tape. Isn't duct tape wonderful? So we taped the big syringe into the small syringe. We were able to push that small syringe into the feeding device, and we could actually give him his formula. So was it messy? Oh, yeah. Did it meet medical standards? Not in one single way did it meet medical standards, but did it work? Absolutely. Because when things don't turn out the way they should, you figure it out. You get creative. You use what you have instead of waiting for what you wish you had. And that scrappy, resourceful, I will find a way energy, that's what makes great businesses. Every time I had to advocate with clarity, read someone's unspoken needs, or figure out a solution when there wasn't an obvious one, I was building the exact skills that made me good at what I do now. And I'm willing to bet you have your own version of this. Maybe it's not caregiving. Maybe it's a business that almost went under, or a betrayal that shattered your trust, or a season where you had to start over from scratch. Whatever it is, It taught you something that your competitors don't know, and that's your advantage. But there's another part of hard seasons that nobody really prepares you for. When you've spent decades being someone's entire world and then suddenly that world ends, you don't just lose them, you lose you. For a long time, I didn't think that was happening to me. I didn't collapse. I didn't stop functioning. In fact, a week after Evan died, I started my marketing business. I went to the state of Ohio and signed up for an LLC. So from the outside, that might have looked like resilience, but this is what I know now. Not falling apart right away doesn't mean you're healed. It sometimes means that you're really just surviving. And for months, I couldn't figure out what to do with my hands. They'd always been busy adjusting a wheelchair, preparing medication, holding his hand. All of a sudden, there was nothing. Meanwhile, the world kept spinning. Cars drove by, people waved, life went on. I remember walking down our road crying and thinking, how can everyone else still be moving when my world has stopped? People didn't know what to say. Some people said nothing. Others offered phrases that they thought were comforting. I nodded and I smiled and I thanked them, not because their words helped, but because I just didn't have the energy to explain what I really needed. What I really needed was for someone to come up beside me and put their arm around me and say, "This is awful. Let me walk this road with you." That's not just about grief. That's about clarity, about presence, about listening. So even when my hands felt empty, they were still being trained. And that's when I realized I had two choices. I could let grief define me. I could become the woman whose son died. I could wrap myself in that identity and never move beyond it. Or I could let grief refine me. I could take everything I learned in those 28 years, the clarity, the listening, the resourcefulness, and I could use it. Not to replace Evan, not to move on like he never existed, but to honor what he taught me by helping other people find their voice. And I realized something: grief and business have a lot in common, and you can't hide from either one. The grief has a way of seeping out, even when you're trying to hold it together. It shows up in your voice, your energy, the way you interact with people. You can't fake your way through it. And the same thing is true for your story. You can't hide the hard parts. You can polish the edges. You can lead with your credentials and confidence and hope that no one notices what's going on underneath. But honestly, you shouldn't want to. Now, I'm not saying that you need to trauma dump on your about page. What I'm saying is perfection is forgettable. Think about the last business bio that actually made you feel something. Probably wasn't the one that was filled with awards and credentials. It was probably the one that started out with, "I started this business at my kitchen table after I got laid off with 2 kids in diapers and $300 in the bank." Perfect doesn't build trust. Perfect makes people think, well, that's great for you, but my life sucks. When I finally rewrote my about page, when I stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't and started being the woman who learned clarity in an ER exam room, something changed. People didn't see me as less professional. They saw me as more human. And that's when I realized that connection isn't the end goal. It's the beginning. Because when you share your story with intention, you're not just helping people feel less alone, you're helping them find their way forward. And your struggle can be someone else's GPS. The thing you're most afraid to share, that failure, the loss, the moment you almost quit, might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to keep going. So when you share your real story, you're not just being vulnerable, you're showing people that you get it, that you've been where they are, that you're not some guru on a mountaintop who's never struggled. You are a guide who has walked this path. You know the terrain and you can point out the pitfalls. And that changes everything. People don't hire the expert who knows everything. They hire the expert who's been through something and come out on the other side. Let me give you a question to think about. Because I don't want you walking out of here thinking, well, this was great, but now I have to post my entire life story on LinkedIn. You don't, and you shouldn't. Here's how to know if your hard story has a play in your business. First, does it serve your audience or does it serve your need to process? If you're still in the thick of it, if you're still angry, still raw, still figuring out, it's probably too soon. Your story needs to have a lesson attached to it, not necessarily a happy ending, but a landing, something your audience can take away and lose. The next question, does it connect to what you do now? My caregiving story connects directly to my work because it taught me clarity, listening, and resourcefulness, all the things that my clients need from me. If I'd been a CPA, would I still have been able to tell the story? Maybe, but I'd have had to have found out some different lessons that had something to do with numbers and systems. The thing you need to do is make your bridge clear. It's not just a sad story. The next question is, can you tell it without falling apart? Now, I don't mean you can't get emotional. Emotion is good. Emotion is human. But if you can't get through the story without completely unraveling, it's not ready yet. You need you need to own your story before you can share it. Here's another story, and it's probably the most important one. Would you want someone else to tell your story for you? Because if you don't tell your story, someone else will. They'll make assumptions. They'll fill in the gaps. They'll decide what your hard season meant to you. And when you tell it, when you own it, you get to control the narrative. You get to decide what it means and what people take away from it. I was at a meeting a few months ago with talking with a bunch of health professionals talking about this very topic. One of them was a liaison between nursing home staff and families. And I asked her, why did she decide to follow that path? She's like, well, families really deserve to know what's happening with their family members. I'm like, well, yeah, but why did you decide to do this? Well, I just felt like there needed to be that extra support out there for families. And I finally just said, did you have experience with this? Oh, yeah. When my mom was in a nursing home, we had a devil of a time trying to stay in contact with the staff. I'd wake up in the middle of the night wondering if my mom was okay. And I'm like, that's the story you need to tell. Not because families deserve it, even though they do, but because you know what it felt like not knowing if your family member was being cared for properly. Your story can be that bridge for your clients. It's not about pity. It's not about making people feel sorry for you. It's about building authority through a shared experience. So, what's the hard chapter you're not talking about? What did it teach you about your customers' fears or about resilience or about resourcefulness? And where did you find an unexpected strength? How can that story make your message more honest and powerful? Because resilience is going to be your competitive advantage. Anyone can market when things are easy, but the business owner who knows how to keep going when life falls apart, when the economy crashes, when personal tragedy hits, even when everything goes wrong, that's someone I want on my team. And that's the person your customers are looking for too. So let's talk about how you actually do this without oversharing or turning your business into a therapy session. I call it charm. Clarity, heart, action, relatable, memorable. This framework keeps your story grounded, purposeful, and usable, not just for a talk, but for your website, for your about page, for your introductions, for your social media, for all of your marketing. So let's start with C, clarity. What's the one message you want to get across with your story? When I tell my caregiving story, I'm not trying to communicate 10 different things. I'm communicating one thing. Your toughest experiences can become your greatest business assets. That's it. That's the message. If someone walks away from hearing my story and they remember only one thing, I want it to be that. Not the medical details, not every hard moment, just the one truth that your struggle has value. So here's another question to think about. What's the one thing you want people to take away from your story? Not 3 things, not 5 lessons, just one. Remember, if you try to say everything, you'll say nothing. Let's move on to H. H is for heart. What emotion are you sharing? This is where most people get scared because they think showing emotion means falling apart. But it doesn't. Heart just means being honest about what you felt. Maybe it's fear, doubt, exhaustion, hope, or determination. When I talk about walking into the ER treatment room, I'm not giving you facts. I'm giving you the feeling of what it was like, the weight of being ready with the lists of the list the team would need to better treat my son, that desperation, the relief when someone finally listened. That's what makes my story stick, not the details, but the emotion. So here's another question for you. What did you feel during your hard season? And more importantly, what do you want your audience to feel when they hear it? Do you want them to feel hope, courage, or permission to keep going? Name the emotion. That's your compass. Now we move to A for actionable. What should they do once they hear your story? Here's where a lot of people mess up because they tell a beautiful story, everyone gets teary eyed, and then nothing. No action, no takeaway, just feelings floating around in the air. Your story needs to land somewhere. When I tell my story, the action step is clear. Stop hiding your hard chapters and use them to connect. It's not vague. It's not be yourself or stay strong. It's specific. Here's another question. I'm leaving you with a lot of questions here. What do you want people to do after they hear your story? Maybe it's start before you're ready. Maybe it's ask for help. Maybe it's rewrite your about page and include the real you. Give them something concrete, something they can walk out the door and actually do. Now we move to R, relatable. Where do they see themselves in your story? This is the bridge between your story and theirs. If your story is just about you, how unique your situation was, how special your experience was, people may admire you, but they won't connect with you. But if you can find the universal part of your story, the part that anyone who's struggled can recognize, that's where the magic happens. When I talk about not knowing what to do with my hands after my son died, that's specific to me. But the feeling underneath it, the feeling of not knowing who you are when your identity is stripped away, that's universal. Business owners feel like that when they rebrand. Parents feel that way when their kids leave home. Anyone who's been through a major transition knows that feeling. You guessed it. Here's another question. What part of your story will your audience recognize in their own life? Find that thread and pull it. That's where the connection lives. And finally, we have M for memorable. What makes your story stick? People won't remember everything you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. Maybe it's a vivid image like me giving a tube feeding with a contraption held together by duct tape. Maybe it's a quote, something someone said to you that you'll never forget. Maybe it's a full circle moment where something you learned in your darkest season shows up years later in an unexpected way. You need one memorable event that makes your story sticky. Here's another question. What's the moment or detail or image that people will still be thinking about tomorrow? That's your anchor. That's what they'll retell someone else. Now, I want you to do something right now. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to come off mute and share out loud. This is just for you. I want you to think of your one hard season in your business or your life, but just one. Now, answer these questions in your head. C, clarity. What's the one lesson from that season that you learned? H, heart. What's the emotion that you felt the most during that time? A, action. What do you want people to do with your story? R, relatable. How might your audience relate to your struggle? And finally, M, memorable. What's one vivid detail that makes it
The food is
real?
here, by the way.
That's your story right there in 5 questions. You don't need to write a memoir. You don't need to share every detail. You just need those 5 elements. Now, before I continue, I just want to address something important, like boundaries. Boundaries matter. Vulnerability is not verbal vomit. You don't have to share everything. You don't have to tell your whole story. You share just enough to connect, not so that people feel uncomfortable or worse, like they really need to take care of you. Your story should serve your audience, not just serve your need to process. Here's a rule of thumb. If you're still actively healing from it, if you can't get through the story without falling apart, if you're sharing it because you need validation, you're not ready to tell it yet. But if you've reached the other side, if you can tell it with perspective and a lesson, if your goal is to help, not just to be heard, then share it. People don't need another expert who has it all figured out. They need a guide who's been where you are and found a way forward. And your story, your real story told with charm, is how you become that guide. So let's circle back to that moment, that one season, hard season that you thought about earlier, that defining moment in your life. What if it's not a burden, but a bridge? What if that's the place where your purpose begins? The charm method is simple, but it changes everything. Clarity gives your story focus. Heart gives it humanity. A call to action gives it purpose. Relatability gives it connection. And memorability gives it legacy. Your story is your superpower. It's what sets you apart in business and in life. So stop hiding the hard parts. Your customers don't need a perfect story. They need a true one. They don't need to hear about how you've never failed. They need to hear about the time you did and what you learned when you got back up. That thing you survived, someone else is trying to survive it right now. And your willingness to say me too, to share your story with clarity, heart, action, relatability, and something memorable, that might be exactly what helps someone else keep going and trust you to help them. Now, I don't know what your hard chapter is. Maybe it's happening right now. Maybe you're in the middle of it, wondering if you'll ever get through. Maybe it happened years ago and you've never told anyone because you're afraid of what they'll think. Maybe you think it doesn't matter or that it's not relevant or that no one wants to hear it. I promise you this, the thing that almost broke you can become the thing that builds your business, not in spite of your struggle, but because of it. Because when you lead with your real story, you give everyone else permission to be real too. There was a time when I didn't know what to do with my hands. Now I do. I use them to help people find the words they didn't know they were allowed to say. So here's your final question. What's the story you're not telling yet? Not because you owe it to anyone, but because someone out there may be waiting to hear it. Now, if you'd like some help shaping that story, if you want guidance, structure, or a safe, intentional space to do this work, I've created a one-day virtual experience called the Golden Thread Story Mapping Workshop. It's intentionally small. I'm keeping it to just 10 people because I want to make sure everyone feels heard and everyone gets the time and the attention that they need. And together we'll uncover your defining season, your golden thread, and map a story you can actually use. I will go ahead and put the link to the registration page for this in the chat. Maybe if I can find it here. All right. This one-day event does cost $47, but you will be spending the entire day in a safe group of people who are all there to start being real. Remember, your story matters. I'd be honored to help you tell it. I'll stop the share right now. I have a workbook that I can share with you. It's a workbook that will help you go through each one of those 5 sections. In addition to this one-day workshop, I'm offering VIP experience. So after we go through our one-day workshop, I want to be able to show you a new story brand format called the soundbite strategy and how you can use your story to fulfill that soundbite strategy. It'll be a 90-minute one-on-one, just you and me. We'll focus entirely on your story. That is $97. So I hope that this was somewhat helpful. If there's anything that you have questions about or any comments, I would be so grateful to hear them. You can just unmute and
Well, that was a fantastic session. I really enjoyed it. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather. That's why I'm not on the screen. But I'm just blown away by your event, by your story. And I think we all do have these stories, and so I'm in. I'm gonna be joining your session, and let's see how we can put that together.
awesome, awesome. Let me show you what that page
Also, your
looks.
workbook didn't upload to the chat.
Okay, let me I will send out a link afterward with a link to I'll post this on YouTube and I will include the workbook with that as well. Um, and oh yes, this I wanted to show you what the page looks like. All right, so this is what that login or that landing page for the workshop looks like. Um, it's really just uh, more details about what you will get when you come to the workshop. It is not a writing workshop. It is something where we will go through things together. It's not a group therapy session either. Believe me, I'm in my own therapy. I don't need to be trying to tell anybody else how to get through their lives. But we will use it as an intentional space to show you that your story matters and how you can tell it.
Well, I would just say, from my perspective, I find it interesting that you referred to one seminal moment or story when at least in my case, I I view things as the sum of all that's happened to me here. And people appreciate the origin story of my brand and why I'm doing what I'm doing right now and how I got here. But I don't think they're going to be too interested in everything that's gone on. That's part of my weave, my woven tapestry.
Well, I agree with you, and I will tell you that I have two other sons, and they each taught me something. Each, all three of my sons have been my best teachers. And when trying to think of what's the story that's going to attract attention, what's the story that's going to demonstrate a little bit more about what I'm talking about, and I thought that would be the story of my oldest. But you are absolutely correct. Our experiences are what form us and make us into the person we are now. And I think I think you have more than one story. You have more than one story. It's like you serve more than one client, and your clients have more than one problem. But when you start talking to them about what you offer, so you have to bring it down to what's one problem. Who's the one client I'm talking to right now?
And it's their
And
story. I'm much more interested in their story than they should be in mine, I
well,
guess.
and I think that you are correct in that. I'm trying to show that that provides a connection that gives us a connection to our clients, that they understand where we've been and what we've been through, and that we can we don't have it all figured out, but that we'll
Oh,
figure it
yeah,
out together.
that part of it I think is absolutely fantastic. In
Awesome.
full disclosure, when I redid my website and reconfigured my brand and launched it in May of 2024, it was based on the Story Brand book. I
Awesome.
read, studied, and worked through the Story Brand book, and then completely redid my website image and all of that stuff. So,
Awesome.
and it's a work in progress. There are still some things in there that. And now, are you familiar with Andy Winnig? Have you met him?
No, no, I have not.
I need to introduce you to Andy.
Okay. That would be great. I would love
Mhm.
that. Well, thank you for being here, Alan, and thank you for
You're
your feedback. I really appreciate it.
you're welcome.
Does anybody else have any
Yeah,
comments or
excuse me.
questions?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Brock.
Hi,
How are you?
Susie. Good. How are you? Great to see you. I just, excuse me, registered for the January workshop, and then I saw it's at 6 a.m. Seattle time. So
Oh,
I
ish.
may just stay up because I usually go to bed at 2 in the morning.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, that happens. Um, no, as you were talking through this, I've written about 500 words, and
Wow.
real, I just, I mean, but I work with teens writing their college essays, telling their stories, and very much in positioning myself as, yeah, write their college essays, but they'll learn and grow as young adults, and they'll have skills to take to the future. And it hit me that when I was working at U.S. Department of Labor in like 1994, 1995, and had this like ridiculous resume. I mean, it's what I have on there is mind-boggling. Dream job for a public policy guy, and I walked to work one day, stopped cold, and said, "I'm living someone else's life." And my life since then, once I kind of figured out what's real and authentic for me, my life is about helping young people and people find their lives and be on their paths. And I'm a mentor and I join them for a little stretch. And it's like, oh, I have other points in my life perfect to talk, because all their parents who I'm talking with have had those points. 16, 17-year-olds, they're freaking out. What's my life supposed to be?
Yeah.
And I'm redoing the website this year. So perfect timing. This was
Awesome.
powerful
Awesome.
and great.
Well, all right. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate you being here. I understand it's a Friday afternoon, the week before Christmas. There are other things that I'm sure you would have preferred to do, but I am grateful and thankful that you decided to spend an hour or so with me. If you've got questions or concerns, please let me know. I will put my email address in the chat. Just drop me an email, drop me a note, and we'll see what happens. We'll see where we go from here. All right. Thank you so much. I'm giving you 15 minutes back in your day. Yay.
Thanks, Susie. Happy holidays, everyone.
Yes, happy holidays. Thank you so
Happy
much,
holidays.
everyone. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
being here.
Thank you so much.